What will artificial superintelligence actually look like? Now, this may sound like asking a chimpanzee how smart a human is, but I don't pretend to answer that question. What we can give a hint of is some of what the steps might look like and how different it might be. And one of those hints comes to us by noticing the communication speed, the way in which it learns, and taking hints from the extended mind theory. So one of the things that is substantially different in a way that it's hard for us to understand is just how fast AI learns. So if you notice, everybody's very impressed right now with ChatGPT, but ChatGPT didn't take that long to train considering it worked on the entire internet and source of, human knowledge. And so learning that sort of thing over the course of what amounts to being like a semester or two in college is almost unthinkable. It's almost unthinkably fast compared to what humans do. Now, you couple this with the fact that AI also can communicate because it lives digitally. It can communicate with other AIs, other computers, very, very, very quickly. And so the communication cost for AI is much smaller than it is for us. For us, the communication cost for new ideas and learning things and doing things is all in terms of, time, real seconds, months, days, years, whatever. We have to expend a lot of energy to listen to another person, to read an article, to watch a video, to do anything that will result in the ingestion of new ideas. AI does this far more quickly. And so what you may have noticed if you've used AI for code is that it can write a lot faster than you can. In the time it takes me to hammer out a prompt that's sufficiently detailed that I can get what I want, it's already written, 100 lines of code that would have taken me half the afternoon, maybe, in some cases, to actually write out. I mean, if we're talking about something that's sufficiently complicated, I ask it about a lot of math, so that happens. So it does things so much faster that we have no real point of reference to understand just how much faster it actually is. And you might think, okay, I mean, what is this, like 10x, maybe 100x, 1000x, who cares, it's just a multiplier. But that's not the case, because when something is that much faster, it changes the way that we are inclined to use it. So when I can use something that only takes me a couple of seconds per iteration, I think about and use that kind of thing completely differently than if it takes me an hour or all day or an entire week to turn the crank once on an experiment or to read an additional article or something. I mean, for me, reading a journal article, even though I've read a lot of these things, it takes time. And so I have to know up front, like, let me read the abstract, let me do a summary or something and make sure that the time I'm investing is actually worth it. Whereas for an AI, I mean, the time to ingest these things is much, much smaller. And so the marginal cost for communication is tiny compared to what it is that we pay as humans for taking on new ideas, not to mention communicating with each other. And this is how it is that I think we should connect this to the extended mind. So the extended mind is Andy Clark and David Chalmers' brainchild from 1996 in an analysis paper. And this resulted in Chalmers walking around. He's a philosopher out of Australia. And he walks around on stage a lot and carries his iPhone and talks about his mind being extended into the phone. And the idea is something like this. We get accustomed to using the tools that we are engaged with on a daily basis, so much so that we incorporate them materially into our thought, which means that when I think in the presence of, or I should say not just the presence of, but intimately connected to the things around me, including potentially other minds. And so this is the argument that they made with John Wooden, for instance, the UCLA basketball coach from the 70s, that his wife would go with him to all the important events. And so he would meet somebody and she would say, oh, John, you remember this is the vice president of so-and-so. Oh, yeah, of course. And so the argument is something like this. His memory was partially offloaded. That task was partially offloaded onto his wife because he was always with her. And so social interactions in that particular aspect of cognitive functioning could happen as a collective. In other words, the boundary of the skin, the boundary of the skull with respect to the brain is just not where the mind ends. And that's ultimately what Clark and Chalmers were arguing. I mean, it's a kind of, modern day version of the Heideggerian point in terms of how it is that we internalize tool use, but nevertheless. So how does this apply to AI? Now, AI, if the communication cost is so small relative to the amount of information that they're able to get and go back and forth with, it means that they are able to extend their minds in much the same way into each other and into all manner of tools and all manner of references, because the lookup is so lightning fast that it may not be any different to actually go and query a database or use a search engine or whatever it might happen to be to get the information, as compared to simply, going through the activation of its own neurons. As a matter of fact, it might be faster in some cases to do that, which is unthinkable to us. We just don't have that kind of, proper analogy to how it is that we think. Our thought is always faster than the other stuff that we would be doing. And so it's going to create a situation with AI where it makes more sense for us to talk about mind in the concept of artificial superintelligence that is smeared out among a lot of not only AIs, but also things, resources, especially digital resources. But, multimodal, that's going to go very quickly, right, in terms of being able to ingest things, maybe not as quickly ingesting things, but nevertheless just as naturally ingesting things. And so while I can't tell you at all, what a artificial superintelligence is going to actually look like, I think we can provide hints as to just how different it's going to be by looking at some of the dimensions upon which we actually function cognitively. And if we think cognitively with the things around us, with our iPhones, as David is wont to say, and with other people, and with, what have you, then it seems natural to think that the AI will do the same kind of thing, but with everything and far more easily. So, I think that's useful, at least in pointing us in the right direction, and it's something that I haven't heard people talk about yet, unfortunately, with this. So I hope it helps.